All right, so hello, Katie.
Hey, Mitchell.
Welcome. Not welcome, since
Thanks.
you're the co-host, kind
Yeah.
of. Here we are wrapping up our Forward in Faith
Series, right?
series. We just launched. We wrapped up the launch of Forward in Faith.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 2-year initiative. So we're not wrapping up the Forward in Faith initiative,
Right.
but we are wrapping up the Forward in Faith launch, in which this past Sunday we announced our starting point, which, when I say starting point, I mean this is where we're starting from.
Yeah.
And it's a 2-year thing. So, and we announced our total of almost $1.5 million
Yeah.
over 2 years, which is very encouraging. That's 67% of our total goal, which I think is a great start.
Sure.
And so here we are. So, and we had a bunch of fun on Sunday. We had a cookout, baptisms,
Yeah, the cookout was a great
new
time.
fams.
Yeah, it
It
was
was
a
a
really
great,
great day. And the weather cleared up.
great time was had by all.
Yeah.
The weather cleared up.
I thought it was going to be rained out.
Really,
I did. When I looked at the weather, I was like, dang, come on, God. Well, he came on.
God
He
responded.
responded.
So now we're, it's a 2-year deal, 2-year initiative,
Yeah.
and
Which seems like a long time, but I mean,
it does.
years kind of blow by.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
But this is so here we are, starting point.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about what God's going to do. I mean, our Hispanic campus baptized 14 people,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
a lot
incredible.
of people. It's amazing.
They are just reaching people like crazy and making disciples, which is awesome. And that's a lot of momentum happening there within our church. So that's really cool to see that happening and what God's going to do, and
Yeah.
God sending us new families, and our Canton campus getting into a space
Yeah, I'm really excited
in
about
the
the
next
building.
month or so.
Oh yeah, I'm excited
So
for that. I'm ready for that.
yeah,
I've
and
been
you have
thinking about.
already demanded a youth room.
I have.
So
I'm gonna die on that hill. So
yeah. So anyway, last time we mentioned we had a Don't Church Me segment,
yeah,
and we thought let's do that again.
right.
So
And just to like clear up, like
just
don't
do a
church
recap.
me.
What is
Yeah.
what is Don't Church Me?
Yeah, because I think like right off the bat, which is a good thing, it provokes conversation.
Like,
Like you
whoa,
hear,
what am I?
right?
What do
It's
you
like
mean you don't like church?
right. It can
No,
come off like negative,
it's not what we
but
mean.
that's not the connotation. Like the context around "Don't Church Me" is really just encouraging people not to be superficial when they're speaking to people. So, like for example, if I'm really going through something and maybe I'm being vulnerable with you, and someone's reaction to me is instead of being empathetic and understanding, it's just like, well, just pray on it. Just pray on it. It's just kind of like, man, like I get that, and prayer is so important, and prayer, does hold a lot of weight, and you do need to pray on your struggles. But when I'm being vulnerable with a friend, and they say something like that, it's like, man, don't church me. Like I'm trying to, just kind of look to you for guidance. And I want you to not dismiss me. It can be kind of dismissive if someone's like, "Well, just pray on it." It's like, "Well, okay, like thanks for that advice. I didn't think about that."
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the context of "Don't church
It
me."
could be a way for people to avoid having a conversation about it.
Yeah, that and like "Don't church me" is it's just saying something because you think it's the right thing to say, but you don't necessarily believe what you're saying,
Yeah.
or you're not going to follow through. Like I've churched people. People have told me their problems, and maybe I've been busy, or maybe I haven't had a lot of context of their problem, and I'm like, oh man, I'm really sorry. I'm going to pray for you on that, and and then I never do. Like we're all guilty of that.
Yeah.
So it's just being more intentional when you're speaking to someone, that you're speaking from the heart, and you're not just saying what you think you need to say in that
Yeah.
moment.
What are some examples of? Have you been churched recently?
Recently, I can't really think of a example recently. I mean, I guess like I can't think of like a specific example. No. What
Yeah.
about you? Have you felt like you've churched someone or been churched
Oh yeah.
recently?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I can think of an example.
I know it's kind of hard to like pinpoint, but you know it's
Yeah.
happening when it's happening.
Yeah.
You just can kind of gauge
One thing that comes to mind is when people use like a word, a certain word, like when people use the word fellowship,
Yeah.
they're like, we're just going to have some fellowship. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean?
Sure.
Like, fellowship is actually much, much deeper than what we would call fellowship.
Yeah, like I would call fellowship having a meal and spending time with friends. That's I would say, oh, I'm so thankful for this fellowship time I had with you guys.
Well, fellowship it is that,
Yeah.
but it's also much more than that. It is a connection that we have to one another.
Yeah.
There's a relational aspect of that. So, sometimes when we say we're going to have, like, when we talk about a church event,
Food, fun, and fellowship.
the 3 F's. Food, fun, and fellowship. And I just think sometimes, and fudge.
It's just the go-to.
And fudge.
Yeah.
Sometimes, it's the go-to. And, or, I mean, gosh, there's how many words do we throw around that are so much deeper than what we experience them as?
Yeah.
Like, one thing I think always comes up is, in the context of like small groups, people say, we're just going to do life together. We're just going to do life together.
Yeah.
Which sounds great.
Forever home.
But yeah, forever home. That's not really a church thing.
No, but it's like in the context.
That's
of
a
like,
Gen Z thing.
It's like those words that they.
Did you say that about your house when you and your husband bought?
No,
your
you know
house?
what we. You know. What
Did you say this is our forever home?
No, but you know. You know what we did say. We know this isn't our forever home.
Oh, you said it's not.
Yeah, we don't think this is our forever
Because
home.
you're coveting a larger home,
Okay.
which is
Coveting, don't
equally
church me,
problematic.
Mitchell.
Equally problematic.
That is a church word, coveting.
It's a biblical word.
It is. It is, but telling me I'm coveting a larger home.
It's possible you could be.
Okay. Let's put my life under a microscope.
sorry.
I would love that.
You said this isn't our forever
Well,
home.
I guess maybe I shouldn't have said that. We don't think, okay, let me
Why not?
rewind. I'm like remembering correctly.
Most people only use about a third of their house.
I can confidently say
according
we
to
lose.
statistics that I think I once read, but don't know where from.
There are 2 rooms in our home that we do not use every single
never
day.
go in.
Yeah, and that's the front room and our guest bedroom.
Okay.
But AJ's in.
Do you have a basement? I can't remember. Okay.
Because me and AJ both work from home. We're in our
okay.
house all day.
So you probably you use more than a third.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
'cause
the
I work in
stat
the
may not
loft.
apply to you.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. So, and that's,
So you can,
another conversation.
You're just trying to justify a bigger house.
100%.
Forward in faith is happening.
I know. And it's one thing to make a commitment, it's another to follow through.
That's right. Let's talk about that.
That's hard.
I mean, we just started.
I know.
So, but you're right. It's one thing to make a commitment. It's another thing to honor it. So
Yeah, and the honoring part is.
and you have to make changes. We've talked about this a little, but
and we have.
yeah,
We have.
You're doing a budget. Mm-hmm. You're creating margin.
Yeah.
Spending less.
Mm-hmm.
Except you did buy donuts again on the way down here.
For the church.
Oh, you're turning that in for reimbursement?
Oh, no. No.
I wasn't sure.
That's hilarious.
Well, let's get back to
I didn't
don't
even
church
think
me,
about
though. What was our last word?
Covet.
Covet. That's right. You accused me. But so there are words that we use, like doing life together.
Yeah.
Or,
Like our phrases
what?
that we use.
Yeah.
That can just
fellowshipping.
They lose their meaning because
Yeah.
they're overused.
Yeah.
Living the dream.
Living
the dream. Yeah.
What are some other phrases that we overuse in church?
Live, laugh, love.
Live, laugh, love. No, I think that's Hobby Lobby.
In church,
You know, and when you think about it, like non-believers in the room, a lot of times they don't even know what we're talking about.
well, and that's the thing. Like, I think that's why church gets a bad rap. Because non-believers can walk into a room and, like, people can tell when people are being authentic or they're not.
Yeah.
And when you have conditioned yourself to act differently when you are in church, what's the point?
Yeah.
You are a glorified social club if you are acting differently in church. And now there's a difference, right, between having respect for the place that you're in. So if maybe you have like a looser mouth, like maybe you like cuss like outside of church, like you're not going to do it in church because there's a respect level there. But you're not going to put on a different entire facade, whether you're in church or not. Or if you're outside of church and you're with people from church, you're not going to act differently. Like, I don't view our friendship circle, me and AJ's circle, as like church friends and non-church friends. You know what I mean? Like, we invite our church friends to everything we invite our non-church friends to. Anyways, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so don't church me isn't a negative like dig at the church.
Yeah.
It's encouraging people to live authentically.
Yeah.
And in the moment speak authentically. You know?
Yeah. Which, you know, in the South, in the Bible Belt,
Oh, bless your heart. That's
bless your heart. That's a Southern phrase, though.
Bless your heart.
That's not really a church.
You hear it a lot in Southern Baptist.
That's not a church me phrase.
I don't know. Bless your heart. It can be a very judgmental phrase.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But it you know, in the South, in the Bible Belt, that is something that I think is still a challenge, to where, you know, it's not this way anymore as much, but, you know, going to church used to be part of the social fabric of culture, especially in the South. Like I said, I don't think it's that way anymore. But one of the problems that was perpetuated and is perpetuated by that is, you know, if people are just going to church to be seen and not to actually pursue community or strengthen their relationship with God, then there's a temptation there to sort of put on a facade and be different than they are outside the walls.
100%. You know, like the people used to, your Sunday best.
Yeah.
You know, and you would come to church dressed to the nines, which is not a bad thing, right? I think the intention was there, the good intention was there. It's like you're wanting to look your best for God. You want to present yourself, you know, but at the same time, that's not why Jesus came. Like, Jesus did not come to save the people who were doing fine in their life.
Yeah.
Jesus came to save, like, you know, church should look more like a hospital.
Yeah.
And you're not going to, catch people in the hospital in suede twill suits or whatever.
Yeah.
And frolicky dresses and, you know, the latest summer sandal.
Yeah.
So
it brings up a great question, though, talking about like the language we use and how, you know, those who are not yet Christ followers can feel excluded or isolated when they're in our midst in the room. You know, how should we be conscious of that? Should we be conscious of non-believers in the room in terms of the language we use? Are we addressing them or talking to them during our services? Like, how are we speaking to them? Should we speak to them at all?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's a line, and I don't know what that line is, because you don't want to be, you know, you do want to be conscious of what you're saying to, you know, the congregation if there are non-believers in the room, because you don't want to church them. You don't want them to feel like, oh man, like I'm going to be judged because maybe I've struggled with alcoholism.
Yeah.
Or I've heard preachers, you know, say in their sermon, you know, talking about like people know not to cuss around me. And if there's a non-believer in the room
What
who
does that
maybe
really mean?
struggles with
Yeah.
their mouth,
Yeah.
it can be like, whew, like that guy, I would be nervous to be around him because I would be nervous he would judge me, you
Yeah.
know, for my mouth. And like, I mean, I used to have a sailor's mouth. I remember like it was like every sentence,
Yeah.
blah, 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 you know, I would just go for it. And I remember when
Yeah.
AJ,
That was
like,
a tough week last
AJ,
week.
oh my gosh.
It's a new week. This week.
AJ had a conversation with me, and he was like, "You have got to stop."
Oh,
He was like, "It is not attractive."
was this when you were dating?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was like, "It makes you seem unintelligent. It makes you seem just not a good thing." And I was
Wow.
like, "Man,
What was that? What was
Okay.
your reaction?
I understood." And it was something that I wanted to be better at because he didn't cuss and he doesn't cuss.
Yeah.
And so I had always noticed that about him, and I always admired it about him, and I wanted to emulate that. I wanted to, you know, follow him in that. So when he, you know, kind of put me in my place, it was
Yeah.
the catalyst that I needed to really start being conscious of like what was coming out of my mouth.
Yeah.
But if I had gone to a church and I had heard that statement being said, I would have been like, who is this guy? Like, he's never cussed before. Like, he's never been frustrated. He's never been mad.
Yeah.
Like, get out of here. You know, I would have taken it not well from hearing
Yeah.
that in the sermon.
Yeah.
But because it was my, you know, boyfriend at the time, now husband, it was someone I loved and respected.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, like, I don't have respect or didn't have respect for preachers, but respect is kind of earned, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I do think you need to be conscious of what you say. If there's a potential of a non-believer being in the room, that's something they can learn about you as they get to know you, as is someone who doesn't prefer people to use foul language in your presence. But
Yeah.
when you say something like that, it can just be like jarring for someone to hear, and they might expect it, but it can make them feel not able to approach you.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, like, you can't be afraid to, you know, speak the gospel truth in a room of someone, you know, that's a non-believer, because that's what we're called to do. We're called to share the truth and to share the good news. And I'm guilty of tapering back. I did it the other day. I was at the gym and there was a girl who,
You cussed the other day?
no, I was,
Oh.
I pulled back on saying that I went to church because there was a girl I was working out with who is a lesbian, and she's married to another woman. And she was talking about how I brought Isla with me, how well behaved Isla was. And I was like, thanks, you know, whenever we go, and I was about to say to church,
Yeah.
I said, when we go out,
Yeah.
you know, I make sure, like, she's very well socialized. And I wish I would have just been like, yeah, we go to church. But I wasn't sitting there like, I was worried. I did not want her to feel uncomfortable around me. I did not want her to think that I was sitting there judging her for her lifestyle, her
Yeah.
life choices. And I pulled back. And
Well,
I wish
don't
I
think
would have
that's a bad
said,
thing.
you don't.
I think sometimes, I mean, you know, like when the opportunity presents itself
Yeah.
to share Jesus,
Yeah.
you know, certainly we want to take advantage of it, but I don't think we need to force Jesus into a conversation,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, or force church into a conversation. And I think, you know, in that moment, perhaps the Holy Spirit was prompting you to keep that, you know, from mentioning that,
Yeah.
because, you know, you might see her next time you go to the gym.
Oh, I definitely will, because
And then it's like, oh, yeah, you know, I mean, it's going to naturally come up
Yeah.
at some point, and maybe God was kind of keeping that
yeah.
back so that you do have an opportunity to maybe have an influence down the road.
Yeah. True, I do like thinking about it that way, but in the moment I felt guilt. That's what I felt. I felt like maybe shame because I felt like maybe I was trying to hide Jesus.
Yeah.
But my intentions
well, I don't
were
tell,
not
I
wanting.
don't come out and tell people I'm a pastor. Actually, try to
Yeah.
avoid that as long as I can,
Yeah, that makes sense.
because people put up a wall, you know, right away. It's like
Right.
I can literally see their expression change
Yeah.
when they find out I'm a pastor.
Well, and that's what I'm talking about.
So-
Like, there is
And I want them
this-
to be themselves, you know, I want
Right.
them to be their natural selves.
Right. And so, like, that's the whole, like, you know, thing behind Don't Church Me. It's wanting people to know that they can be authentically themselves around people who are pastors and work in the church. Like my favorite thing about the staff at Legacy and like the friendships I have at Legacy is I do not have to hide who I am. If I am frustrated, I can tell people I'm frustrated and I'm affirmed, you know, hey, like I see what you're feeling that way, and I can understand it, and then I'm encouraged. You know what I mean? But I'm not shamed or put down just because I have a human feeling.
Yeah.
And if I had to be in a church setting where I had to put on this hoity-toity, everything's fine, I never forget to read my Bible, I'm always pleased with God, I'm never frustrated with his plans, I would go crazy.
Yeah.
And that's why people, I don't think, love church sometimes, because they feel like they have to be someone else.
Yeah.
And that's exhausting.
Yeah.
I was actually watching this like interview with Jim Carrey, and he was talking about depression. And he was like, depression comes out when the body has had enough of when the body has had like all it can take of putting on a front.
Yeah.
And he was like, I look at depression as deep rest. Your body has done all it can, being someone it's not, being someone who it's not.
Yeah.
And it is done with it,
Yeah.
and it needs a deep rest.
Yeah.
And you go into depression. And I thought that was really interesting. I've never thought of it that way. I don't know if I agree with it like fully, because like I've been depressed before, and it hasn't been because I was necessarily like, I didn't feel like I was faking who I was.
Yeah.
But I could understand how people who deal with anxiety or depression,
Could be a symptom.
it's like this constant feeling of trying to keep up this
Yeah.
act.
Well, that
and it's
will
exhausting.
literally cause anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
I mean, you see it in the youth today. Why do people think that like mental health and social media are so like tied together? Because social media is so fake.
Oh, it's
And
the worst for mental health.
it's awful. And I truly believe it's because these students, these high school and middle school students who have the world at their fingertips, are constantly fed these
Yeah.
different expectations, these different images, these different facades
Yeah.
that they think they have to keep up with. And they're not forming authentic relationships.
Yeah.
They're not being their true selves. And they're caught in this horrible spiral
Yeah.
of trying to be someone they're not. And God's whole thing is being who he created you to be in that moment.
Yeah.
And so it's the exact opposite. And so no wonder like this epidemic of mental health is going on, because you are trying to live outside of the way God created you.
Yeah. Social media is destroying.
I hate social media.
It's destroying our youth.
It is.
And I might sound like the angry old guy, but I think it's probably the worst thing for your kid.
It is.
If you have a teenage son or daughter, I would not let them have social media. And I actually, like there's studies out now, 10, 15 years ago, like we didn't know the full effects, but now we do.
Yeah.
There's a book out. I think the guy's name is Jonathan Haidt, Heidt or something like that. And I think the title's called The Anxious Generation.
Yeah.
And he publishes data in this book, studies that they've done about social media's impact on mental health for teens. And it's horrible. It's a horrible impact on both boys and girls, but especially girls.
Yeah.
And so, like, now that we know the data and the effect that it has on teens and their mental health, maybe we should have a conversation with our kids about, social media. And, I would suggest, if a parent says, well, my kid has social media, they've had it for years now, what do I do? I would suggest practicing fasting from social media as a family. Get, everybody in the family sits down and goes, hey, you know what? We're going to fast as a family from social media just start small. Just maybe like from social media, we're going to fast from it on Saturday, on Saturdays. And on Saturday, we're not going to do any social media as a family, or or for the weekend. You know, this weekend we're going to fast from social media as a family. You know, so like, but I think you have to have those conversations as a family, because it's not going to get better.
Yeah.
Like, social media is going to destroy teens.
Ugh, social media is the worst. And the
So-
hard thing is, though, is like, you know,
I'm off my soapbox.
social media. I'm not off mine yet.
You're still on it.
Social media is what keeps kids connected nowadays. And the hard thing for a parent, you know, a kid going into middle school, high school, is like, well, all my friends have it.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy cow, like, how do you combat that? Because you don't want your kid to be excluded.
Yeah.
You don't want your kid to feel like an outsider, but we also know how harmful social media is. I've been thinking about, Isla has not yet turned 1, and I am already thinking about how can I get her to understand that I don't want her to have social media, not because I don't want her to be, you know, with, you know, in.
She doesn't have a Instagram?
No. You know what? I have not posted my daughter on social media.
That's good.
I have kept her.
That's good.
I haven't posted myself
You're
in 2
pretty
years.
non-active on social media.
I try really hard not to be. I used to be very active on it, and what I realized, I was very. I'm a vain person. I am not afraid to admit that. I am a vain person, and social media was fueling that. When I
Oh,
would
sure.
post a picture, I would constantly be checking for
it's-
likes and comments.
I mean, it literally raises dopamine levels.
Yeah, and when I noticed that's what I was doing, was I was so obsessed with seeing like how many people like, and I didn't have it. did not have a large I didn't even have a small following. I think I maybe had like 150 followers, but that is what, like, that's where I got my worth from, was
Yeah.
how many people liked my picture. And they were all selfies. Gag.
Really?
Yeah.
You were a selfie.
I was a selfie
selfie addict.
girl.
Oh.
And
This
once
is the old you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but I still struggle with it. I still want to post pictures, but I
Yeah.
know it's not going to do anything for me but feed that vanity.
Yeah.
And so I keep myself, I don't post about myself
Well,
anymore, and I don't post Isla.
As a young parent, I mean, you have young kids. We have young kids.
Mm. Yeah.
The battle is screen time, you know, whereas
Yeah.
social media later that battle's coming.
Oh, yeah.
But the battle is screen time, and you know, we're not perfect, and you know, it's like I think I've read where, you know, it's like you don't let them watch a screen at all for like till they're 6 months old. I don't remember what the ages are, but we didn't follow any of that to start.
It's hard not to.
Yeah.
Sometimes I need 5 minutes to go to the bathroom,
Yeah.
and so I
Or
put
you're-
dancing fruit on.
You're in a restaurant and it's just blown up, and
Yeah.
you know, like it you know, you hand them a tablet because
We try to keep Isla awake in the car with Miss Rachel.
yeah.
Because my child is one that if she gets a 5-minute power nap, she's not going to bed till like 10 or 11.
Yeah.
And that does not, it's not
It's
conducive.
so easy to like, you know, screen time. I mean, that's a challenge. That's a challenge for us in our
Yeah.
family, and something I read or saw that I thought we're trying to implement is, you know, that screen time is not a reward in our
Yeah.
family. It's just part of the routine.
Yeah.
So like, you know, when my oldest gets home from school, you know, he gets an hour of screen time, of TV time,
Yeah.
and then, you know, that's just part of his routine.
Yeah.
So he doesn't see it as a reward.
They don't,
hopefully.
it makes them not covet
The
it.
goal is that he doesn't see it as a reward,
Yeah.
but he sees it, oh, this is just what I do from
Right.
2:30 to 3:30,
Right.
you know, and then it's something else.
Right.
So I think that's some good advice that I was given or
Yeah.
came across.
Yeah.
For parents, young parents out there, screen time, make it part of the routine, not as a reward,
Well, and it's,
but just make it part of their regular schedule
I think that
and limit it.
limit it. Yeah. But people need to understand too that it's wildly different between every kid.
Sure.
I've seen, you know, articles where mom said, I kept the TV on in the background and now my kid doesn't even pay attention to it. Or, you know, but for some kids, like they just, for whatever reason, they hyperfixate on the screen.
Yeah.
And you can't do that because
Yeah.
they'll just sit there and stare at the screen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's, oops, I just hit the mic. it's so hard trying to find what works
Yeah.
best for you. But
Let's talk about something that just entered my mind. In this culture, we've had a little bit of conversation about this, but we're in a suburb of Atlanta, metro area, and it seems like there are some things that are obstacles to being a follower of Jesus in our culture. I think three of the biggest ones are hustle culture, um, uh, youth sports,
my gosh.
and what I would say is revenge vacationing, to where during COVID, like, people couldn't go anywhere
Yeah.
or didn't go anywhere. Now I feel like they're going somewhere all the time to kind of like make up for lost time. And so I think those are three big obstacles to following Jesus more closely. What would you say to that? Agree, disagree?
I agree with youth sports. And what was the first one?
Hustle
culture. Revenge vacation. I think you can. I think you. I don't like fully agree with that one. But the
You're
youth
supposed
sports.
to agree with everything I say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's part of the deal for.
Youth sports.
I have notes on this actually.
Youth sports are just all consuming. They take away from everything else in the world. So you miss family time, you miss, church time, you miss friendship time, you miss relationship building. You are, around a certain group of people.
I would say it's not just youth sports, it's actually travel sports.
Travel sports is a good,
Yeah.
but like middle and high school sports are so demanding.
Yeah.
And I guess I didn't realize how demanding they were when I played because I loved playing. And
Yeah.
so I couldn't get enough. But now that I'm an adult looking in on the other side and like seeing my friends, their sports schedules, I'm like, their children's sports schedule, I'm like, how are you supposed to do anything else?
Yeah.
Like weekend rest, forget it.
Yeah.
You're at tournaments.
Yeah.
You're at games.
Yeah.
Weeknight, like family time dinners, forget it. You're at
Yeah.
practices. Like it is insane to me, this expectation that are put on our middle and high school students when it comes to a sport. And it's because competition, the competitiveness has gone up and up and up. It's like, Home Depot and Lowe's, or like, when Black Friday used to be Black Friday, and then that one department store started opening on Thanksgiving night.
I miss that.
And
actually.
Everyone started opening on
I
Thanksgiving
miss when
night.
you had to show up to the store.
Right. At 6 a.m.
Yeah.
It wasn't midnight.
Yeah.
It was
It
6
kept
a.m.
moving up earlier and earlier.
until it was Thursday night.
And
on
then there was kind
Thanksgiving.
of a reversal where it
There
started
was a-
swinging back the other way.
Yes, and I think stores are less inclined to open on Thanksgiving night. I think they saw the
They
error
stopped
of their
doing that.
ways.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. So,
But youth sports, I mean, this is not a popular perspective or opinion, and some people probably get mad at me. But I think some parents are trading spiritually defining moments for a temporary high of their kid having some success in sports
okay,
that 20 years from now no one's going to remember.
hear me out. It's not necessarily unfortunately, it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
You can't, if your kid wants to play a sport, they have to be in for all of it or they can't play. And so it's like, what do you do when your kid
And for
says
all
they
of it,
wanna,
what do you mean?
like practices and games? You can't just be like, okay, I'm going to sign my kid up for soccer, but he's only going to come to 2 nights of practice a week and maybe games if we don't have family time going on the weekend.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that parents take their kids out of sports. But I will say that there probably comes a point where you have to make a decision. Like when there's Sunday games, when there's Sunday tournaments, when you're traveling every weekend for this sport, like what price are you paying?
Right. I mean, it's hard.
Like, I don't think, you know, I mean, I don't know that my kids are going to be athletic enough to play travel sports because they're who their dad is. But if they are given that opportunity,
It's such a shame because you're so tall. What a waste of talent. I'm
Wow.
just kidding.
you know, I had
Oh,
a
man,
I
I'm
had
just
a dis-
kidding.
I had a distinguished college athletic career. I'll have you know, I was a two sport athlete in college.
What did you play?
True story.
What did you play?
True story. I was on the team
What team?
for two sports,
What team?
basketball and baseball. So I was technically a two sport athlete.
Did you get a scholarship?
No, I went to
Oh.
a small Bible college.
Well, I just feel like people see how tall you are.
I was
and
on
they
the team.
instantly-
I was on the team for social reasons. I was friends with the guys on the team, and shared an apartment with some of them.
Okay, that's hilarious.
So I just joined the team because we got trips. We got free trips to Florida. We went to California one year over Christmas break. Oregon. Like, I got to see
like a
some
lot of the United
parts
States.
of the country that I would not have been able to see. So I was, you know, there's a big debate in college sports right now about paying players and paying athletes and whatever.
Oh yeah.
And you know, they call it, should we pay them? And
I thought they said now that they
now
can.
they can. They just
and now you
they
see
just
these like
passed the law.
18, 19-year-olds
But
driving
I
these
was
insane
I
cars.
was technically getting improper benefits before that was a thing, because I was getting free meals, free travel as a college athlete. So yeah, I was a two sport athlete.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. So then maybe your sons will be too.
Probably not. Anyway, the point is there are some obstacles to discipleship in this
Yeah.
context in
Yeah.
Metro Atlanta.
Well, and
I think travel sports is one. I think hustle culture is one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think vacationing, revenge vacationing, I call it, is a third.
Why do you say that though? Because vacations are a good thing. You mean like people who are like financing their vacations?
Yeah, but
Or, like, keeping up
it could
the
also be
Joneses.
like, you know, like if you're constantly out of town on vacation, or you know, then where's the time?
You're
that
not like watering your plants here.
yeah, you're not
Literally and figuratively.
literally, you're not, but you're not building relationships here.
You're not growing your roots here,
You're
yeah.
not growing your roots here. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, and some people feel the need to go somewhere every weekend. That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I mean, in this community, like, some people have, you know, discretionary spending, and they're putting it all into renovating their house and taking trips and all this stuff. And I think sometimes, not that those are bad things,
Yeah.
sometimes those can be obstacles to discipleship.
Sure. I could agree with that.
Thanks for chatting.
Yeah, it's always fun. I'll sign us.
See you next time.
Yeah, definitely. I'll sign us off. Katie and Mitchell's podcast.